With us now is Dr. Tahleel Javed, who's a doctor training in psychiatry and has been diagnosed with ADHD. And we're also joined by Dr. Tony Lloyd, the CEO of the ADHD Foundation Neurodiversity Charity. And good morning to you and welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Javed, if I might start with you, can you tell us a bit about your story? When and how were you diagnosed with ADHD?
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story. Actually, I got diagnosed quite recently, just a few months ago. And it happened because I moved from Pakistan to United Kingdom to work as a doctor. I would have taken the pressure, but I think COVID also had to do a lot with respect to, pushing me over the edge. I ended up, going into a complete shutdown phase where I did not know what was going on. I wasn't in touch with my family, with my friends, basically just desperately trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And that was a feeling that had lasted and that had been there since I was maybe 2 or 3 years old, but I never knew what was it. It just got amplified to the point where I was desperate for answers. And it wasn't until after I started working in psychiatry that I got diagnosed. And that too was incidental because a colleague pointed it out that, have you thought about ADHD assessment? And I actually laughed because for me, unfortunately, as majority of doctors, ADHD had always been about a young boy running here and there. So that's the concept of ADHD was in my head. But as I studied about it more, I realized that no, that's not the case. So I went ahead with the assessment and I was formally diagnosed. And after that, the neuropsychiatrist also pointed out that I might have autism. That was again a shock, but eventually I ended up getting diagnosed with both ADHD and autism.
I'm going to interrupt you, Dr. Javed, because I do want to come back to hear more of your story, but I would like to bring in Dr. Lloyd just at this point, if you don't mind, because I could see you nodding along as you were listening there, and clearly a lot of what Dr. Javed was saying sounded familiar to you. How different is ADHD in women from men?
I think it's a really good question, and this is why so many women are missed. But I actually think that for many women, there's more of an internalization of their anxiety and frustration, which in boys we tend to see expressed in a more physical and hyperactive way. But I also think there's a cultural issue here in that we don't think of females as having ADHD. And, there's also these enduring cultural prejudices around this idea that, you have fidgety, hyperactive and impulsive children. And actually that trivializes just how complex and debilitating ADHD can be. And the fact that actually we miss most girls who we diagnose quite late, much later than boys, and significantly less girls than boys. And then we see, the example here that we've just been listening to, where undiagnosed, untreated ADHD really does increase the risk of women experiencing acute anxiety, depression, postnatal depression, other physical ailments, greater risk of eating disorders and obesity. So we really are sort of neglecting women's health by not being aware of this. And we just need to have that understanding that ADHD does occur in women, and whether they're a qualified doctor, whether they've got a degree, no matter what job they do, you can be academically successful and a professional and still have ADHD. So there's a great deal of myth and stigma that we really need to challenge if we're going to be able to help women, and give them a better opportunity in terms of their physical health, but also their economic well-being and their educational achievement. What Dr. Susan Young said earlier on, on is absolutely true. We've got to get better at spotting this in girls in school.
Unfortunately, there's never enough time, is there, to discuss all these topics in as much depth as we'd like to, and we've run out of it now as we head towards the top of the hour. But Dr. Tahleel Javed and Dr. Tony Lloyd, we're so grateful, both of you. Thanks for joining us here on BBC News.
Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca.